Bruce Hay is now playing the victim. But I know for a fact that really up until the Title IX complaint came in, Bruce Hay thought that he was in control of the situation. Bruce Hay felt in charge.
Do you feel in charge?
And I'll tell you why I think that. The load-bearing element of the scam they pulled on Bruce here was the idea that she was pregnant with his kid. The question is not gullibility here. If he had more self-respect, he might have still believed what was happening, but he just wouldn't have tolerated any of this. But he believed that he was coming out ahead this whole time because no matter what the girls put him through, in the end, they were taking care of, he believed, his baby, which he sired with a woman who I have no doubt had better sex with him than his wife ever did. I mean, he lives in a platonic relationship with his wife in his house with his kids, and he thinks that he doesn't need to tell her about affairs. I mean, he thought, he's banging a young girl on the side, and she's having mood swings, because that's what hot liberal college chicks do. They have mood swings. And so really, no force in heaven, earth, or his own mind would stop him from going down with, like, this path that he put himself through. I mean, hiding it from his wife, that like they were moving around, going on a secret trip to Canada. The way he saw it, he has kids with 2 different women, and all he's got to deal with, he's got to spend money, which he has in abundance.
Clearly.
And deal with mood swings. This is what we call beta game. He had a point to escape this, right? The point where he could have jumped out of this was when they had that kid and didn't put it on the birth certificate. Ironically, these 2 women disarmed the most potent weapon the legal system gave them against it. I mean, once you can get a man on the hook for child support, I mean, that's it. And he would still be kind of screwed in the sense of like all the money he'd put in. But if he had just bailed out then, all he would be a college professor who had sex with a student and then got a Title IX investigation on him, right? He could be in worse company. We wouldn't be reading this article and making fun of him.
No.
Right. His relationship with his wife and kids wouldn't have been annihilated.
His relationship with pretty much everyone on the planet has been annihilated.
Yeah. And once they brought up the Title IX,
dinner with this man,
I'm sure at the time too, he thought that he was really smart and he could like talk his way and negotiate his way out. But listen, once they bring up the Title IX, it's gonna happen, right? I mean, that's like the terrorist throwing off his jacket and revealing the dynamite on his vest with the button on it. And also he's immune to explosions. It'll only kill you. Okay. The negotiations are over. All you can do is just take the blast. You can't talk your way out of it. I mean, we're looking at a person though, who has problems ejaculating because of his meds, has been depressed for a long time, and was molested. Oh, it's mentioned in the article that he says he was molested. And he says he went off the meds when he and his wife were trying for a kid. But that means probably that even his kids by his wife are not his. He has more than one. I'm betting at most the first kid is his. I cannot imagine a woman deciding to have multiple children with this man from what I see of his character. This wife was with him for beta.
And what we know of the fact of their arrangement. Though I don't imagine that a wife just says, you know what, honey, now that we've had 3 or 4 kids or whatever, now we can just kind of live in this house and as friends. Occam's razor would say the reason that situation came about was that she had already started seeing another man. And then when that other man sired at least 1 kid with her, she said, okay, let's kind of break off this, quote, marriage, because now we don't really have the family unit we thought we had. And yeah, I don't blame her.
Yeah, so this guy definitely 100% is acting like he's the victim now, but I am 100% sure that this kind of person who thinks that he can sort of roll intelligence instead of charisma and negotiate his way into a poly relationship as basically the only cis-identifying male in it, absolutely 100% thought that he was hot shit up until that Title IX investigation.
Yeah. To quote from the National Review article of it, Hay got sucked into a vortex of things that light up all the pleasure circuits of the woke. A hip international lesbian, a trans person of color, an unconventional living arrangement, Harvard, and of course, lots of political discussions about victimhood.
Yes.
Hay was under the impression that the trans person was the victim in his story, And in fact, he was. He fell for a progressive honey trap. Although now it does seem like he's portraying himself as the victim. Whereas before, he got to portray himself as
a liberator.
Yes, as a liberator in the story. That he comes in with this young girl, saves her. He's taking care of his kid. He's doing all the right things, making all the right moves. When in fact, he's doing all the wrong things, making all the wrong moves.
Yes.
And now that he realized that, he thinks he's the victim.
Yes. And because at every step of the way, he kept negotiating himself, right?
Yeah.
As to how, it made sense for me to do everything I was doing.
Art of the deal, don't negotiate against yourself.
And there was an interesting tweet thread about how Republicans were going to seize on this to attack the idea of Title IX. That was a takeaway on liberal Twitter about this story. Like, you saw this whole thing, and then it ends with Title IX, and it's like, oh my God, they're going to attack the Title IX investigations.
Which, by the way, I don't want to go all, Colonel Jessup, a few good men, but you're goddamn right we are. Because if this doesn't cry out for, you're given on a silver platter a perfect example of a Title IX abuse. But, no one could be on the other side of the story. It's not conceivable that a sane person could be on the other side of the story. On the side of saying that, well, this is how Title IX should work. This is legit. And the idea that you would say, you come up with a situation where some regulation or some rule or some policy is used in a way that literally everyone agrees is abusive. And then you're going to say, oh, but we shouldn't reform it? What? What other conclusion could you draw about Title IX? I'll let you go on.
Yeah, there's almost not much else I feel like saying about this story. I really just want everybody to read it and really appreciate. There's no point in this story where I didn't believe it. There are stories I read where I sort of am like, like with the other one we were talking about, I've already forgotten this person's name, Jessica Yaniv, where I was in like disbelief.
Yeah.
I don't disbelieve anything about the story.
No, that's the thing about the story that's so surreal, is that every single fact in it is crazier than the previous one, and yet at no point do you go, no, that didn't happen. You say, yeah, at everyone, the fact that it's so crazy almost makes it more plausible. It all rings true.
Yes. At the end of it, this is in its own way a tale as old as time.
A song as old as rhyme.
All this is just, a man who is in a bad relationship with his wife, cheats on her, and then gets brought through this parade of humiliations.
Fuck.
All that, but with a Massachusetts 2019 twist.
Yeah.
Right? You just sprinkle a little bit of Harvard on the whole thing to really spice it up.
This man, I'm sorry, excuse me. This mouse, this worm, whatever you want to call him, he's not a man. This, as you put him, genius of decision making and judgment. This guy lost his house, a $3 million house too. Lost his house, as you said, annihilated his relationship with wife and children, and his relationship with the whole world. He is no longer a professor, correct? Or at least he's not teaching anymore.
He can't teach until the investigation concludes.
So his career is effectively, at the moment at least, in shambles. His life, his house, his career, his standing, his status, his self-respect, almost everything you could. Yes, I can't think of a single thing they did not, the only thing missing was they did not physically maim him, did they?
Right. So they did hit him with a car. But...
Sorry, excuse me. So, literally in every aspect, he's been destroyed. But usually the guy that does this for the French girl on the side, he at least gets to nut. Hay couldn't even do that. That's like the real, it's that, oh man, it's like he wished on the monkey's paw to have a fling with a young exotic student.
Yes.
And the finger on the paw curled up, and all hell broke loose. I hate to keep making Rick and Morty references on the podcast.
Jeez. All right.
Our reaction to this story is like that Rick and Morty episode. They have the horrifying ordeal on one of their trips, and they just get in the spaceship and close the door, and they both just kind of pant for a few moments, and then just start screaming and crying. Like, we're just emotionally exhausted.
Now, I do want to close this episode off on a lighter note.
What a segue.
Speaking of extended deceptions, I saw the newest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Far From Home. It was fantastic. I mean, unironically, it was probably one of the best Marvel movies I've seen.
Was Marissa Tomei was in it, right?
Oh yeah. She plays Aunt May because Aunt May keeps getting younger.
The hottest Aunt May in history.
Oh yeah. It was Spider-Man. The villain in this one was Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. It was, I think, the only live-action depiction of Mysterio I've ever seen, and it was better than anything I could have hoped for. If you have not seen this movie, I highly recommend it. Oh, and J. Jonah Jameson appears in this movie, and it's the best possible depiction of J. Jonah Jameson in the modern age you will ever see. By this point, you've already heard that it's J.K. Simmons playing him. If I spoiled that for you, too bad. You should have seen this movie already. And the way they go with Jonah, the way they go with Mysterio, the extended deception that Mysterio pulls, because that is what Mysterio does, is just fantastic. I really love that movie. I'll give it 5 stars. Full endorsement. That's really all I wanted to say. And until next time, I'm Marcel.
And I'm Dan.
And this was The Moral Minority.
I'm not going to say it.
Say it with the echo.
Cue Richard Nixon.
Let us be united for peace. Let us also be united against defeat.